What happened to the Jaguars offense in 2023? Let's talk about it. So, guys, this video is brought to you by BetUS. And, guys, big announcement tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Wednesday, I should say, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The NFL Picks and Predictions channel, brought to you by BetUS, is having a Super Bowl preview and playoff picks and best bets type of show going on. It's going to be a live stream, and of course, it will be archived. So, definitely go check that out. I'm going to link that down below. It's a show that you guys will not want to miss. And also drop a subscribe over there too. Helping out the sponsor also helps out this channel, so we'd really appreciate that. And look, guys, BetUS is your best place to be able to put down some Super Bowl bets. I know we all like to, even people who don't really gamble throughout the year, it's fun to do that. You pick your Gatorade color, you got a rooting interest in a national anthem, you're all of a sudden cheering when you see Taylor Swift on the screen because you took the over on the amount of appearances that she has. So, guys, all that is going to be right there for you guys on BetUS. Your number one spot to do it. 125% deposit bonus if you use my link down below. 24/7 customer service and 24-hour payouts. So thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about this Jags offense. So when you look back on a 2023 Jaguar season, we all had sky-high expectations for the offense. And honestly, on a defensive side, not really all that much. I think not really people had many expectations from the Jaguars on defense. I think that, a lot of us had concerns about the edge rusher, which turned out to be true. I think we're kind of worried about the kind of players that we had there. And look, it didn't really perform very well. And that was the only guy to really have to face the consequences of having a bad year. Mike Caldwell was essentially the fall guy for the 2023 Jaguars. Now we look at things and we say, you know what? The defense underperformed, I guess, but the offense is what we all thought was going to be crazy good. You know what I mean? We thought Trevor Lawrence was going to have this 5,000 plus passing yard season, 30 plus touchdowns. We thought he was going to be an MVP candidate, but from one reason or another, he underperformed. You also thought, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones were all going to eclipse 1,000 yards receiving on the year. Only Calvin Ridley did. And Calvin Ridley did it, honestly, through a season that wasn't really super fun and impressive. And look, the offensive line that was very heavily invested in, and make no doubt about it, this offensive line does have some big investments in it, was one of the worst units in the NFL. And it was just so bad that the Jaguars could not generate any kind of a run game down the stretch, and had our quarterback suffer like 5, 6, 7. I'm exaggerating. I think it was 4 total injuries on the year and 3 in December. They had him suffer all those kinds of injuries when the most important player in the Jaguars organization, the most important person in the Jaguars organization right now is Trevor Lawrence. And they just flat out didn't do enough to keep him protected. So it was a complete failure on that end. So, yeah, the Jaguars fell way too short on offense. And look, why did this happen? Today, we're going to kind of dissect it. And look, I did this stream, honestly, yesterday on Bleacher Report. And, a lot of times they give me different things to talk about. And yesterday, they kind of said, you know what, you have free reign. You can kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about. But I did an offseason preview. It's a little bit too early to go into free agent prospects. Definitely too early to get into the draft. So I was like, what can we talk about right now? And I was like, you know what? Why don't we dissect really this Jaguars offense and talk about how we need to fix it? So first of all, I think the biggest issue with this Jaguars team and offensively, I guess just overall, is a thing that we learn in business. It's called tone at the top. Okay. The very top of the organization sets the tone for the team. And guess what? Shad Khan is a guy that has no accountability, does not hold himself accountable. And the reason why I say that is we remember when the Jaguars hired Urban Meyer back in 2021. I wasn't even all that mad at it because, look, we did an off-the-wall thing. We kept getting things wrong. It's like, you know what? Why don't we just go all the way out there and try something new for once? And look, it was a complete flounder. And honestly, if Shad Khan did a little bit more research and listened to some smart people and wasn't so egotistical, he probably would have seen this a mile away that it wasn't good. And look, Shad Khan has a lot more access than a guy like me when it comes to talking like to these kind of people. But, he has access to do that. And if he did a little bit more research, it wasn't so hard-headed, he would have never hired Urban Meyer. But guess what? It happened. It was a failure. And then 1 year later, at his second introductory head coach press conference in 365 days, somebody asked him, "Hey, what about Urban Meyer? Last year you said that you got it right. What do you think about that?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I got it right this time." I mean, why can't an owner just sit here and say, "You know what? I messed up. I apologize. Look, there's a lot of season ticket holders out there that spent a lot of money on this bad product. There's, people making 50 grand a year that are investing a pretty decent percentage of their annual income to come into the stadium and watch the product that I am in charge of kind of putting together. And look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to them. I'm sorry to all the fans that had high expectations for this team. I'm sorry about everything." No, he doesn't say that. He just says, "You know what? I got it right this time. I meant 1 year I got it right." It's like, dude, you suck. And you know who sucks just as bad as Trent Baalke? And I put more blame on Shad Khan, because Trent Baalke, it's not his fault he has a job. You know what I mean? Shad Khan keeps him employed, and for some reason he has so much say over this Jaguars football organization when everybody in the world says that this guy sucks. And he does suck. And look, the team that he put together is just awful. I mean, like personnel wise, he just did not do good enough to be able to take a great 2022 season and propel it into the future. So I just think overall, just the team building and just the overall tone of this organization is just bad. It's just bad. And honestly, there's no changing it. Unfortunately, there's no changing it. So we get into the next thing to blame, and I think offensive line, especially the interior of this offensive line. And when you look at the offensive line in totality, the lone bright spot I think was Anton Harrison. He had a great season this year. I thought Walker Little before the injury was doing really good at left tackle, and then Cam Robinson came back, and then he shifted Walker Little to left guard. Walker Little gets injured, and he wasn't really himself the rest of the season. And look, the interior of the offensive line, center Luke Fortner, I never want to see him start another game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They need to address the center. He was a bad center, very low football IQ, was not very strong, played with very high pad level, awful, I guess form. What's the word I'm looking for? Awful fundamentals. I don't know. I don't even know what word I'm looking for, but yeah, awful at all that. And then look, right guard Brandon Sheriff, he got hurt early on in the year, so I don't know how much of him was just like injured versus just him getting old, but I thought he was kind of disappointing. And look, nobody settled in at left guard. If I count the different starters, Ben Barch, who got cut midway through the year, Walker Little, Tyler Shatley, Ezra Cleveland, and I think I'm probably even missing somebody. There were so many starters there, and nobody really got acclimated to play left guard for the Jaguars, and it was just a turnstile there. So, and look, it really got exposed in December. With Trevor Lawrence's injuries, he just couldn't. Trevor Lawrence couldn't rise to the occasion, and I can't really blame him too much. I mean, you're playing on a hurt ankle, a hurt shoulder, and every time you drop back, you're getting hit. And your offensive, like the run game this season, at least in December, was maybe one of the worst run games I've ever seen from the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's tough to compare because the Jaguars have had such bad seasons, and I try to forget what our run game looked like in 2014. These random throwaway years, what it looked like in like 2019. You know what I mean? We try to forget those years, these bad years, but man, that had to have ranked amongst the worst kind of offensive lines out there. And look, the Jaguars, they need 2 or 3 brand new starters in the interior of this offensive line. When you look at how to do this, look, Cam Robinson, I know it's a hot take, but look, if you cut him, you're saving $16 million, and you're able to allocate that to different players. If you cut Brandon Sheriff, you're saving $9 million against the cap. So right there, cut those players, that's $25 million you have to play around with. You can sign some lesser tier free agents to kind of be, I mean, for Brandon Sheriff and Cam Robinson, you can easily get one very, very good interior offensive lineman, or just get 2 upgrades, you know what I mean? And find ways to draft, guys. I know right now I'm taking an eye on that Samoan dude from Oregon. I think his name is Austin or Jackson Powers or something like that. I don't know. I'm not I am, as Trent Baalke says, not a Jimmy's and Joe's guy. Okay. But that guy's definitely catching my eye. So yeah, you got to draft. You got to You got to sign some guys in free agency. And overall, we can sit here and debate, oh, do we need wide receiver to sign a wide receiver? Do we need to do this at cornerback? Look, you can debate all that. You cannot debate that the Jaguars need to reinforce this offensive line, and especially on the interior. And also, it's just, I think it also needs a mentality fix the offensive line. I mean, how can you just come in there and just get bullied every single week? This team it was just soft. They got to be better than that. And it all starts in the trenches. I mean, the game of football, you got to build everything from the trenches out. Okay. And, the Jaguars, and you're getting bullied on the offensive line and the defensive line. We saw what happened in December. What happens? Okay. We got dominated on both sides of the ball every single week outside of the Panthers game. And we look like a bottom 5 team in the NFL, just straight up. So next up, I got to put blame on Doug Peterson and Press Taylor. Look, the offense at no point ever got into any kind of a rhythm. There was a stretch there in November where I got hopeful. Look, the Jaguars offense played a really good game against the Titans at home. Then the next week you go to Houston and play a game against the Texans and, go strike for strike with, the eventual AFC South champions with CJ Stroud. And, that was a pretty good offensive day. Trevor Lawrence was wheeling and dealing that day. And the next week against the Cincinnati Bengals, we start off pretty good. I mean, that defense was the thing to blame that game. And at the end of the game, Trevor Lawrence's ankle gets hurt. And the whole entire season, that was the end of the season, basically. We thought it would be the end of the season because we all thought Trevor Lawrence was out for the year. He wound up Supermaning it and playing 6 days later, but he just wasn't the same. And the thing about it was, like, when I put a lot of blame on these guys, and look, like, people say, oh, fire Press Taylor. But if you fire Press Taylor, this offense is just as much Doug Peterson's. You know what I mean? When you look at Ryan Nielsen is a Jaguars defensive coordinator now, and he's going to have full autonomy of the defense. If you're bringing a new offensive coordinator, it's still Doug Peterson's offense. He's just going to train a guy to kind of run his offense the way he likes it to be run. So at the end of the day, the offensive coordinator for the Jaguars will probably always be, some kind of assistant, or it would basically be an assistant, So Doug Peterson has heavy involvement with this offense. It's just a big question of how involved is he? And I just got concerned because, look, it looked like Trevor Lawrence and the wide receivers were constantly on different pages. Okay, just constantly on different pages. And I put that straight on the coordinators and the coaches because, look, your players are out there and they don't know what plays they're running. They're on different pages. You know what I mean? That the coaches had to make sure players were prepared, and they just weren't prepared. You know what I mean? It happened when we saw it a lot with Calvin Ridley. We saw it a lot with, Parker Washington. We got in later in the game. Too many miscommunications and stuff like that. And look, when injuries piled up with Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Agnew, Trevor's ankle and concussions, and then, some interior offensive line injuries, the Jaguars just had absolutely no answers for the rest of the year. And that's why we ended the season 1-5. And like the Jaguars had to do, Doug Peterson and Press Taylor just need to do a deep dive on this offense and figure out what do we need to run the offense that we want. Do we even have the personnel to run the kind of offense that we want? Because in the NFL, you need to build your scheme and everything around your players, okay? You don't build players around your scheme, so they have to figure out what they have. And I have a big complaint about how it just seemed like the Jaguars there were so many things I was wanting them to do that they started doing a little bit, but that seemed like they went away from it because that's not their core. And I'll give you an example. I was saying, look, our run game sucks. We can't get any push in the middle. Why don't we bring a tight end in there and play fullback? They did it a little bit, but then they went away from it. I was like, yo, Calvin Ridley is just standing out there every single play, same position. We don't ever move him around or anything. Then they started motioning him around a little bit, and then they kind of went away from it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I just think that while I think a lot was working against them, and I do feel for them a little bit away because it's like, look, like if you can't run the ball, that's why we're doing so many offensive screens. And like, I don't think Trent Baalke did a very good job of giving these guys tools to be successful. But at the end of the day, you work with what you got, and you can't defend the miscommunications, wide receivers running wrong routes. You can't defend that, hey, bring in the extra blocker back in there, or anything like that. So yeah, it's just a little bit disappointing. By a little bit, I mean very disappointing. So And at the end of the day, look, the Jaguars, they need to figure out Trevor Lawrence. Like I said, he was the MVP candidate we all thought going into the year. And he was just disappointing for one reason or another. And I know me, I don't put a lot on Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to say this a lot. Like, everyone can have their own opinion about Trevor Lawrence. I have my opinion about Trevor Lawrence. And I think Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback. And honestly, I think that we, as a football organization, failed Trevor Lawrence. I don't think Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback failed the Jaguars. You guys have your opinions. We can kind of debate this all day, but that is the approach that I'm taking. Okay. And it feels like we failed him in a lot of ways. And look, Trevor does need to work on some stuff, most specifically his fumbles. I mean, he has a real fumbling problem. He has to fix that. And, there's several things that Trevor Lawrence obviously does need to work on, but the Jaguars need to do what they can to make sure that they don't fail this guy, because we've seen it before in the NFL. I mean, the Lions failed Matthew Stafford. He never won a playoff game for the Lions. He gets traded over to the Rams, and the very first season he wins a Super Bowl. And right now, the Jaguars, we were hoping that we would start to build some kind of I wouldn't say dynasty, but a team like the Ravens, a team that's winning games every year, that's into the playoffs all the time. I'm not even saying building a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Just be like the Ravens. Have consistent winning seasons, get into the playoffs, win some playoff games, and just be a fun team every year. And we didn't get that this year. And it sucks that we are not back-to-back AFC South champions. Now we have some work to do to get back to it. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence has the tools to get it done, and we'll just see what happens. But yeah, these are my different things that happen. I just think that, and look, I think that there is some optimism here. Like I said, I believe in Trevor Lawrence, and I don't think we're that far away, like personnel-wise. Just figure out a way to rebuild the offensive line. You got to nail your draft picks. I mean, that's no longer an optional thing to do. You have to hit on your draft picks this year. And I believe in Doug Peterson, and I think we have some good players, but it's up to Trent Baalke to make sure that they get, Doug Peterson and everybody has the dudes, the Jimmies and Jones, to be able to build this thing into another winner. So yeah, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Shout out to BetUS. Like I said, big time show on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So check that out. My link down below. Also 125% deposit bonus. Start checking out some Super Bowl bets, prop bets, Gatorade colors, first half scoring, all that different stuff, MVP winner, all that stuff is right there for you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Go Jags.